Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We are doing a special Meet Your Livestock Specialist event online to introduce you all to our fairly new livestock specialist, Dan McCarty, who is going to be on talking about winter feeding and nutrition needs for livestock. And for those of you who don't know Dan, Dan is part of our regional small farms team. He works part-time up in Clallam with their 4-H programming with their youth. And then part-time, he is split between 3 counties for Clallam, Jefferson, and Kitsap. And he's available to farmers in our region who have livestock questions, troubleshooting. He can do online phone calls or also in-person technical assistance. So tonight, Dan's going to talk specifically about winter feeding and just open it up as a conversation for questions from you all. And then also, if there's additional livestock questions you have for Dan, at the end, we should have plenty of time to answer those as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dan to introduce himself a little bit further, and he can start with his presentation. During the presentation, if you have specific questions that come up, we're going to ask you to hold them till the end, but you can put them in the chat at any time, and we'll circle back to them.
All right. Well, thanks, Jess. Let's go on. Oh no, my screen's not sharing. There we go. Okay, so as Jess said, my name is Dan McCarty. I'm the livestock specialist here, and she said I split my time between about 50% Clallam County 4-H, kind of a paid 4-H leader here, which is unique. And then the other 50% of my time, I work with the regional small farms team, dealing mostly with livestock. I do get out in the field and do some like pasture management, grazing management, things like that as well. So you notice that there is no PhD or DVM after my last name. I'm not one of those high-powered folks. I'm just a real-world guy with a lot of just firsthand livestock knowledge and things like that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about winter feeding. We're getting that time of year when the pastures are not producing grass anymore, and the energy level for our livestock are going to be increasing. And as the plants start to die out or die off for the winter, we need to start thinking about how we're going to get our livestock through the winter. And so it really starts out with what kind of condition are they in going into winter. And if their body condition is poor, they're going to have a hard time getting through winter. Now, I realize that with the cost of hay and other feed products, that this is going to be a pretty tight winter for folks financial wise. But I'm going to talk a little bit about 5 tips for winter feeding livestock. As I said a little bit ago, all livestock require increased nutrients this time of year, just to, in order to stay warm, above their normal requirements for body maintenance. If your animals are in gestation, you got babies growing inside, and they're going to need to have those extra nutrients as well. Again, once your grazing pastures are snow covered or the grass is nearly gone, you really should be thinking about winter feeding, additional supplemental feeding. So 5 tips. We'll start with number 1, forage first. We're going to need that high quality forage. To keep your animals to through the winter. So that also includes vitamins and minerals. So ruminants, which is the sheep, cattle, and goats, they need that energy for digestion of forage, which is your complex carbohydrates, but they also need the protein for the rumen microbes. Again, if your pastures or your the hay that you feed is low quality or low protein, you may need to supplement with some protein pellets or some high quality alfalfa hay. Number 2 is increase forage during these cold spells. Again, I just can't repeat that enough, that it's important that that they have these extra nutrients. If you feed twice a day, you're probably feed the biggest proportion in the evening when the winter or when the weather and temperatures drop it to their coldest at nights. So I'd also make sure that you do put out extra straw for bedding, so that they can also, not only get off the mud and snow, but also they can use it for eating as well. So your oat and barley straw will be more palatable than your wheat straw. Avoiding waste and preventing illness. This we want free choice of them to have access to feed most of the day, but we want to make sure that that they do clean up what they're being fed, so that you can keep an eye on, and just have that free access to them. So make sure that when you are providing hay, that you do it on pastures or on the grass or the snow, not on mud or bare ground. They're like you and I. They're going to need a nice clean place to lay down. So if you're using feeders, you probably should move those on a pretty regular basis in order to have the animals avoid standing in mud and manure around the feeders. Many diseases, especially your young animals, are spread via feces. So keep the feed clean. And again, just keep it spread out. Your feeding area spread out will keep those animals cleaner, and which should help them with reducing any health issues. Okay, so free access. You want to have your forage available, around all the time for these animals, so that they can maintain that energy level, which will keep them warmer. Let's see. So yeah, so make sure that they have free access to that. Some folks have what they call stockpiled pasture. They've let the grass grow tall, so they can feed on at that time of year. That just helps as well. If you're going to do that, you're going to want to make sure that you allow them to move around the pasture. So if electric fencing may be required, so that they're not eating or standing all the time on your on bare ground or in mud. So windrows or bale grazing are some of the ways to provide this access. Growing up, over in Eastern Oregon, out of Pendleton on a cattle ranch, this is what we did all the time was with our bales. We just kept moving our sites kind of windrows, I guess you would call it, on a on a daily basis, so that we could spread out the cattle and do that. Again, fencing helped with, or portable fencing helped with that. And of course, one of the most important things you're going to want to do is remember the water. Make sure that they don't freeze up in the wintertime. They may, if you need to have stock heaters in your troughs, make sure that they're wired properly so nobody's getting shocked out there. And make sure that it is clean water. So a lot of folks I know do water out of the creeks and streams. There is a bunch of studies out there that all livestock will do better with pasture, with watering out of troughs. It's it won't be as cold if they happen to break through the ice, and using that energy up for that. If you've got sheep, they can usually manage eating snow for their water consumption. Cattle are a different story, especially if they're eating hay. Again, without adequate water, livestock won't eat enough and will lose weight, making it harder for them to get through the winter. So that concludes my 5 tips for the winter feeding. Here's my contact information, and if you need to get a hold of me, either email or cell phone is the best. And I will. Looks like we have a couple questions in the chat box. So, any questions out there?
I don't see any questions in the chat box, but if Dan, can you elaborate on your last one? Can you go back one slide? Sorry.
Sure.
I'm curious. You had pointed out the fact that especially cattle, they won't eat enough if they aren't drinking adequate amounts of water. What's that? What's the what's behind that? I guess is because if people are not on top of making sure they're getting clean and adequate amounts of water, I guess I just had never heard that before.
Yeah, so they do need that water content to help with the fermentation process in the gut, for digestibility. And without it, yeah, they just won't eat enough to maintain or for their energy needs.
Okay.
For them, for maintenance themselves. And if they're or if they're gestating or lactating, there are additional nutrient requirements.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Dan? This is kind of a free form online, it's part presentation, but really more for you guys to meet Dan and ask questions of him. So I know that there's different farmers from different counties here. So if you have anything specific with winter feeding, questions, nutrient questions, anything really is open right now for you to ask Dan. And don't be shy. You can put it in the chat and we can ask it, or you can feel free to unmute yourself. I'm not seeing anybody raising a hand. Let's see.
So like Jess said, I am willing to go out and to your place, and answer any questions. I do anything from pasture managements to uh, helping select animals to increase the quality of the herd, um, and pretty much anything in between. So
There's a question, looks like John has a question in the chat. What supplements should I be providing, such as minerals, such as mineral blocks or salt?
so during the winter time, if you can find a protein block along with I mean, most of your feed stores will have these lick blocks or things like that that should provide some additional nutrients. And usually they are balanced to meet the needs of the local area.
And then Megan has a question. Could you give some more information about different types of protein sources for cattle, protein tubs, etc., to balance out low protein, low quality hay?
Um, so I mean, alfalfa pellets could be used as well. Um, any of your like like yeah, so protein tubs, your higher quality alfalfas are usually the easiest ones to make that work. There are some additional feed sources out there. You could talk to your feed store um, folks about what they offer. Um, but it's usually pretty simple. If you can get an alfalfa uh, or protein blocks, that usually works pretty well. I said I like to keep things simple, and that's what we did.
Jacob has a question about nutrient question about dairy goats. He recently heard that they don't need grain at all. Is that true?
Let's see. So it depends on if they're lactating. Um, if you're going for volume, you may want to provide that extra those extra nutrients, um, especially during the winter time.
And then barley grains readily available in bulk in one of their counties, Jen's county. How much nutrition does that provide for overwinter cattle?
That is a pretty good source of nutrients. Um, I can't recall what the um, some of the standard protein content of that is. I'm looking it up as we speak. Um, but it is a great resource.
Maybe before we hop off, if you have any other thoughts on that one.
Yeah.
And then from Erica, do you have any specific suggestions for low condition dairy sheep? She has a couple that she's watching, offering grain, oats, Timothy, and alfalfa. Anything else that she should add? And she's noting that their sheep are being bred now.
Um, we used to do a lot of flushing with some higher quality alfalfa at breeding time. We had pretty good success with that, especially when it came to increased reproduction. We had a lot more twins when we did that with our sheep. How old are these sheep that are in kind of low, what you're considering low quality or low condition? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
You're on mute, Erica.
She may also be typing.
Okay.
So if someone was interested in talking with you, like let's say for specific with Erica, with her situation, if she was interested in having you kind of assess what the best possible suggestions would be for this, would that be something she could reach out to you about and have a conversation with you directly about so she could do some question and answering?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um,
I'm gonna also put in the chat just really quick for everyone because I'm not sure. I know Dan's email is right there, but we also have on our regional small farms website, and I just posted the link there. On the sidebar, there's a farmer technical assistance form. So if at any time you're like, after this call, you're um, not just for Dan's purposes, but we have other specialists in our Tri-County region here that are available to you guys, like Laurel, who's our IPM specialist, for instance. We do have a technical assistance form for farmers. So any questions you have that you might want assistance with, you can actually fill that form out and it gets automatically distributed to the person that would fulfill that request. So I'd just like to point that out because I think some folks aren't aware of all the resources on our site. But also specifically with that, it's a really easy way. And I just posted the second link is the actual technical assistance form for anybody who's interested in looking at that. It gets very detailed so that we know who you're looking to get assistance from, what specialist. And please feel free to reach out, obviously, to Dan directly if you have specific questions. And I think we've said it already, but he's more than willing to do phone calls or even if it necessitates an on-farm visit.
yeah. So getting back to Jen Bond's question about barley. So barley is about 11, almost 12% crude protein, where some of your alfalfas are in that 14 to 16%. So again, that's a pretty good source of protein. There are some ration calculators out there that you can put in that can help with this.
Yeah, do you know, Dan, is there one that we could easily post as part of the follow-up resources or that you could provide?
Would have to. I don't have access to it right now, but um, I know that WSU has one. Has a flyer on it. I'm just can't find it at the moment. So
Yeah, I think as a follow-up, we could add that as a,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And then Jen said, thanks. I may give that a shot this winter if I can figure out a dry rodent-free storage situation.
Yeah,
Um,
I thought I had that on my list, but I'll find it and we'll pass it on to Jen, and then she can pass it on to those that participated in it.
it looks like Erica said her sheep are 10 months. So back to her question on suggestions for low condition dairy sheep.
Oh, okay. Um, so they're fairly young. Yeah, they should have, what you know, what I saw should have been um, a pretty good, you know, feeding program. Have they been wormed lately? That would be my one question. Um,
And then the other thing I want to point out, because I know, oh,
Hmm.
she put yes.
Okay. Why don't we talk or send me an email and we can set up a time to come look at them. So that would be. Yeah, you bet.
And then I think, yeah, so Jacob had said he'll reach out to you as well with more goat specifics. But that also brought back to my mind just as a follow-up. So Dan did a dirt tuck farm walk this past, gosh, what was it, Dan? October, September, end of September at
End of
Bowman
September.
Farms. Yeah. And you did specifically goat meat production with Mark Bowman
Yep.
and talking about pasture raised goats. And then we're going to be doing a follow-up, it sounds like, potentially for spring pasture with Mark as well. And then Dan's also scheduled to do a farm walk in Kitsap, all about the basics of goat care. So we've got a lot of new farmers in our 3 counties that have been interested in goats in general. And so we want to offer like a very basic class on basic goat care, and Dan's going to be helping lead that with the local farmers. So there's going to be a couple in-person farm opportunities that you guys can all access this spring and summer with that, where Dan will be in person as well. And then you'll also get exposed to other farms that are doing specific things. So if you haven't already gone to our website and signed up for our newsletter, please do, because that's going to be how you'll get that first information source for those events that are happening. And I'll go ahead and also post that link for our newsletter in case you haven't done that. Does anybody have other questions for Dan? Doesn't have to be specific either to winter feeding. This is just kind of a way for you guys to also be able to connect with Dan in general. Don't see any hands raising, but I want to give a few minutes just in case. I'm going to go, oh, Jared has a question. Jared has 2 pigs, heritage breeds. I missed most of this, but what should I be looking to feed them?
Um, so it depends on, if you're going organic or if you are grain feeding. Going into the winter time, it also depends on if they're in gestation or if they're just in maintenance right now. Usually, let's see, 3 months old. And are they, let's see. So yeah, depends on what your plan is for them. If you plan on eating them in the spring or finishing them out in the spring, uh, okay. So then yeah, I can just continue to make sure they have a higher protein feed. Um, their feed source available all the time with clean, fresh water. Um, and make try to keep them out of the mud and the weather as best you can. So they're pretty, they don't have that hair coat for protection like sheep or cattle do. So they just need to be, have that extra energy to help keep them growing and maintain.
It looks like John is interested in learning more about how to reduce moss in his pasture.
That would probably be a Laurel discussion.
Have you
So
come across many farmers that have had that question of you? I'm
no,
curious.
I have not. So
Okay. Yeah, John, we also have, and she happens to be on the call, and I just noticed she popped her head in. Maybe Laurel has an answer for you on that one.
Could you repeat the question? Sorry, I just happened to hear my name.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. We have someone who is interested in learning more about how to reduce moss in his pasture.
Mm. Yeah, moss is mostly due to shade and moisture. So um so yeah, and then making conditions, it's kind of the same with a lot of pasture management, making conditions that are favorable for the grass, but typically moss is due to shade and moisture. So you'll have to, is it a shady spot?
Yeah, I've got a lot of trees surrounding the pasture. Some of it, I can start removing some of the alders to clear it up, but some of it just seems to be right out in the middle in the sunny spots as well.
Well, we could I could take a closer look and see what kind of moss it is, um, to see if there's another answer to that. But I think key is kind of getting the good uh implementing practices that will encourage the grass to grow more. Moss can also be due to compaction if the pasture was used for something else historically, like storing heavy equipment or something like that. But yeah, we can look more into it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then Megan pointed out a soil test might be a great way to see if low fertility is also leading to the moss issue. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I see both Jen and Megan on here. You guys should pop on, and if you have anything else to add, um, that'd be great.
No, that was great, Laurel. I like have laryngitis or something going on, so I can hardly talk. But I was interested in hopping on, and I know Jen was too, just to learn about the nutrition side, because that's something we don't know a whole lot about. So
WSU has some great resources on that. We can certainly plug you in with some of the publications.
yeah, and the good thing is that now that we have Dan, whereas before we were kind of reliant upon some other livestock specialists on the other side of the state and across, not in our area directly, he's more capable of coming directly and figuring out harder problems too. So if you have anything specific that's going on that you've maybe not been able to get anybody to help get answers for you, then Dan can kind of dive into that as well. And if he doesn't have the answer, he will find the answer. And then Jen and Megan, where are you guys? Are you guys from Clallam?
Yeah, they're from our local conservation district here at Clallam.
Perfect. Wonderful. That's great.
And if the pasture management questions get too hard, I do pass them on to Jen and Megan. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say they're both great, and the soil testing goes through the conservation district office. So that's like Megan said, that's a big step towards starting your pasture management journey.
Yeah,
this is such a great partnership. Just to be able to kind of pass all this stuff all around all of us. So appreciate you guys are doing these really great talks. These are neat.
Yeah. Does anybody have other questions for Dan about winter nutrition needs or any specific cases? I think oftentimes also, I mean, no question is a dumb question, right? I think something that you may be experiencing might be helpful to other farmers too, who might have experienced similar situations. And also no pressure. Dan's gonna actually be doing another one of these. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it next? It's
next Wednesday afternoon as well.
Wednesday afternoon. Yeah. So if you registered for this one, you have the link. It's the same link. You're welcome to re-register for that one if something, sprouts in your mind and you have further questions or want to chat with Dan more via the virtual format. And definitely pop back on there if you are interested. That one is next Wednesday, the 16th, same time at 3:30. So he'll be giving the same presentation, to people who were not able to come today, but also having that open conversation as well. Well, I don't see anybody else raising hands. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. If people want to continue chatting, though, that's great.